He picked up a girl's body, stripped naked, and entered the can to store it. Although he was so greedy that he was drooling, he did not dare to taste it, because the children in this orphanage were all high-end foods held by rich people, and he was just a humble working ghost. No child can live past 12 years old, and if his intelligence is not up to standard, he would be taken away as a defective product in advance. However, from the perspective of the child, there are indeed some kind hearts and willing to adopt him. Before coming to this orphanage, their necks were printed with their own numbers, as if they were to be slaughtered, but they themselves did not know that in the eyes of ghosts, the child's IQ would directly determine the quality of flesh. Therefore, every once in a while, the dean would conduct an intelligence test on 38 children. Once the intelligence fails to reach the passing line, the end was to be out of the cage early, which is the so-called adoption. What is different from the past is that there are unprecedented 3 top-notch products in this batch of goods. Norman, Ray, and Emma are easy and perfect every time they test. Among them, Norman and Ray are both truly talented and intelligent. Emma has motor nerves and learning ability that are far beyond ordinary people. But this does not mean that no one in the orphanage can compete with them. She is a harmonious and friendly dean. No matter how the 3 of them rack their brains, they have never won her in chess. The dean has repeatedly told everyone not to go to the other side of the fence and claim that there are dangerous things outside. But Lay saw through this at a glance. This is the dean's lie. After all, he really can't figure it out. What can such a short fence can prevent? In addition, the girl in glasses also found a doubt that the adopted child has never written a reply. You should know that although they are not related by blood, the time they stay together has made them like biological brothers and sisters. However, this suspicious fire did not go into too much inquiry. After all, the outside world is a wonderful thing they could not imagine. If it was because they were living too happy every day and forgot the orphanage, this pair accepted a new life. It was a good thing. So soon, the next adoption candidate was decided invisibly. The girl was only 6 years old, but her performance in the intelligence test was not satisfactory. Instead of continuing to raise her, wasting food, it would be better to pack it up and send it to the dining table in advance. Logically speaking, this should have been a plan without flaws. But Emma accidentally discovered that the girl forgot to bring the rabbit doll, so she immediately went to the gate with Norman. Although the dean said that they were not allowed to get close, Norman and Emma had already made up their awareness of being scolded and only hoped to send the doll to the girl. After searching for the girl for no results, the two decided to put the doll in the cargo box and left. But how could they know that here they will see a scene that will never be forgotten? The 2 of them never expected that the girl who said goodbye to them had died now at a terrible death. At this moment, the voices of several people talking came from the house. Seeing this, Norman and the others had to hurriedly find a place to hide. Finally, they lay under the safe car, listening to the strange voice. Emma subconsciously wanted to see each other's true appearance, but she didn't. The person in charge seemed a little dissatisfied with the quality of the goods provided by the dean this time. But fortunately, he saw the transcript. There are 3 with full marks are now almost 12 years old. So he asked the dean to prepare for the 3 of them to ship the goods recently. The person in charge also noticed that something seemed to be strange under the car. He took a look and saw a rabbit doll. At the same time, Norman and the other 2 were desperately escaping from the gate. Emma did not want to accept the food, they were just being kept in captivity. But Norman knew very well, nothing was more real than what they had just seen. If this continues, all the children could not escape death. Returning to the orphanage, Norman immediately thought about the way to survive. He believed that as long as he joined forces with Emma and Lay, there would be a way to escape here. But they ignored the most critical point. The dolls left on the scene would be the biggest variable. Just place a girl's body on the dining table and embellish it with fresh fruit at home. This is the top feast where people are afraid of people and love ghosts. They hope that everything that happened just now is just a nightmare. But despair is that such nightmare happens real every 2 months, because this place where children are raised is not an orphanage. But it is better to describe it as a farm. The object of hypoxia only changes from cattle and sheep to humans. Children aged 6 to 12 can be released in the name of adoption, under the careful breeding of the dean. Every child has a dream and hopes that someone will adopt himself earlier. However, on this day, 2 children accidentally discovered the truth about the orphanage. So from this moment, Any behavior of the dean is so creepy in the eyes of Emma and Norman. The two took advantage of the free time to move outside the railing the next day to discuss how to escape safely. According to the layout of the orphanage, they only have two ways to leave, either through the gate or escape from the forest. Considering that the door will only open when the ghost comes to get the goods, they may be caught on the spot if they are accidentally caught. The two have to rule out this high-risk option. But the edge of the forest, surrounded by several meters of high walls, also becomes difficult to escape. Fortunately, it is not completely impossible, as long as they find a rope long enough. And the guard is only the director. The director climbs over the wall alone, which is not difficult. However, the situation is not satisfactory. Soon, Norman and Emma discover a terrible fact. The dean can actually grasp the real-time location of each child, just to glance at something. In a few minutes, they found the girl who was sleeping in the forest. It was also at this time that Norman and the two realized that they were naughty before and liked to run around. But the dean always found them quickly. Now I think about it. The dean must have an instrument that can explore some signal in their hands, and they are in their hands. It is very likely that some micro-device was implanted. And the most terrifying thing is that the dean deliberately showed the instrument in front of everyone this time. The purpose is that there is only one mother, and she walked away in a daze. Because of the doll left last night, the dean had known that someone had noticed the truth, but she didn't know who was referring to it. She kept testing the suspicious object, and Emma became the first choice. After all, Emma usually jumps around. But why did she seem a little taciturn today? At first, Norman was very worried about whether it would be exposed. Fortunately, Emma hid it with her superb acting skills and claimed that she just thought of leaving here, and she felt a little lonely. A reasonable reason could also be regarded as dispelling some of the dean's suspicion. The two thought that this would be possible to escape. However, the dean's lower behavior chose to go straight to his face.
行かないよ。それが規則だし。昨日は鬼ごっこに夢中だったもの。ね。そうそう。どうして？いいえ、それならいい。
This sudden inquiry made Norman and his two psychological pressure sore. They just left the dean's sight, and their legs became weak, and they knelt on the ground. But on the positive side, they at least did not reveal any flaws. The dean could not stare at the instrument all the time. The next important point is to obtain the materials for making ropes. After searching, the tablecloth became the best material. Just go to the warehouse to steal a few pieces late at night, and then hide under their clothes when they were free to move the next day, and can be carried smoothly into the tree hole near the high wall. In this way, the rope problem was solved. Then we had to think about how to find out the signal device on our body and how to lead everyone out of here. During this period, Emma proposed, or tell the truth, to Lei, who is as smart as them. As a result, there were many helpers. As soon as they finished speaking, Lei suddenly emerged from behind a tree. It turned out that he had long noticed that something was wrong with Nona and Emma. He was very curious that the two went to send dolls that night. And what happened? When he came back, he looked frightened. It was already here, and the two told everything. What surprised Emma was that Lei accepted the fact that they were food. After all, this was said from Norman, who had always been calm. Then Lei roughly confirmed several policies before the escape. First of all, the number of people must be controlled in the safest range. He didn't want to say anything, but before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Emma. In any case, she wanted to take everyone away. Lei replied, not to mention 37 children, most of whom were less than 6 years old. Just the current prerequisites such as signal devices and ghosts have great restrictions on them. If Emma doesn't give up, then you might as well assume boldly that even if everyone can leave here safely, what should you do after going out? Since someone regards them as buyers of food. The worst plan is that the outside world is already ruled by ghosts. The possibility of an entire army being destroyed is infinitely close to 100%. So it is really not a wise move to take everyone out of the orphanage.
やだ。無理でも私は全員で逃げたい。なんとかしよう。は
あ? Unexpectedly, Norman followed and persuaded him to go. He laughed out loud on the spot. His thoughts were already the same as Emma. After hearing this, Lei didn't understand why.
好きだから。好きだから。エマには笑っていてほしいんだ。おかしいだろ。
In Norman's heart, it is unlikely that he will take everyone away, but he is willing to use himself completely for Emma. For example, he knows that as long as he stands on Emma's side, Even if he makes an extremely irrational decision, Lei will definitely not refuse them to save him, and thus step into this pirate ship. The fact is, as Norman expected, Lei can't do it, so he lets the two of them ignore it. However, the new variable once again hits the confidence of the three people. The new orphan is sent here, and there is also a tall care worker. This also means that the difficulty of their escape will increase again. When Emma checks the baby's body, she suddenly finds a raised object on the back of her ear. This also means that she has found a way to escape from the orphanage, because she understands that there is a signal device installed by ghosts in the raised area, just like the positioning collar on the animal's belt, which is convenient for the other party to be able to grasp the other's movements at any time. This orphanage is a human flesh farm carefully built by ghosts. Once the child is trained to the appropriate stage, he can be out of the cage and sent to the ghost's dining table. Soon, the girl told her two companions about her discovery. Now that she knows the location of the signal, she will try her best to remove it so that she can escape later. However, the three of them soon found that this idea is unrealistic. If they cut their ears open and take out the signal, it is very likely that the dean will find it, or the signal has been set to be a suspect, and the alarm will be issued. Therefore, it is best to hold the troops in the first place. Let Lei, who is good at studying machinery, find a solution. However, compared with the problem under the signal, the top priority is how to lead the other 35 children to escape together. There is no doubt that most of them will definitely drag their legs. However, Emma did have an idea. Since the other people's physical and mental strength are not enough, then the three of them will train themselves, under the guise of ghost-catching games. Train the children's escape ability and hiding thinking in all aspects. The important task of playing ghosts falls on Norman, who pays attention to details. Emma, who has outstanding athletic ability, teaches children how to control their bodies flexibly. As for Lei, it is a review afterwards and provides improvement suggestions for each child. In this way, under the training led by the three, the children's escape time gradually becomes longer, and the ghost catch game for several consecutive days naturally attracted the attention of the female nurse. She also knew that the three were teaching everyone to practice escape. Since this was the case, she also wanted to see the results of the three training period during this period. So she proposed that he be a ghost this time, as long as she caught everyone in 20 minutes. Even if she won, Norman and the three understood that this was a cat and mouse duel that would face sooner or later. Like the nurse, they also wanted to know what the other party could do. In the next 20 minutes, the nurse first used leaves with special patterns to attract many young children. They fall all in one go. Then she found the child who was hiding with many clues. Of course, her adult physical fitness also gained the upper hand in the pursuit battle. She caught 33 people in just a short while. Even the three of them were stronger. She analyzed it well. Although Emma's athletic talent is indeed great, but in the eyes of the Guardian, innocence is the biggest shortcoming. Just keep two children on purpose. Emma will definitely not be able to make it. She will definitely choose to show up and take her children to escape. The result of this is that she exhausts her physical strength and has to hide nearby, losing the best time to escape. It was only 12 minutes since I caught Emma. The nurse thought it was enough to catch Norman and Ray in 8 minutes. After all, Norman's sports are not good, and Ray is the easiest to give up. Therefore, Norman is undoubtedly the priority to capture as target. But he ignored Norman's strongest layout ability. Just when the nurse was shocked, the time was unknowingly. After 20 minutes of walking, Lei also stood up and told him the fact that she lost. After this simulation escape, both sides gained a lot. Although the nurse was amazed by the wisdom of the two men, she was extremely clear that there was a huge information gap between the two sides. If this escape was compared to a card game, what she got was a secret card that only she could see. Every card of the Norman 3 was a famous card. A few days passed in a blink of an eye. The three of them also discovered something was wrong. It was obvious that the dean and the nurse knew that they planned to escape. Why there was no countermeasure at all? I think it must be the dean who had a way. Even if he didn't come forward, he could grasp their actions in detail. Considering that the orphanage did not have a camera or eavesdropper, there might be only one left.
すでに他の見張りがいる。多分、子供たちの中に。内通者がいる。
In order not to become a delicacy on the ghost table, this group of children must escape from the orphanage within 2 months. However, most of the children are under 6 years old. Therefore, the three, who led the lead, thought of using hide and seek to exercise their ability to escape. Each older child leads a team to hide separately and then someone acts as a search officer to put some pressure on them. This not only can the children be trained to obey the command skillfully, but also indirectly find some practical experience for future escape. However, the most urgent task now is to find the insider who is involved in the children. In this regard, they have to suspect two kinds of people. One is that although they are young, their IQ is far beyond their peers. The other is that they are older children 1 or 2 years younger than them. According to Lei, Emma scanned her eyes and found several suspicious objects that meet the conditions. However, she did not know that Norman had already set up a secret plan. When he learned that Lei could find a way to destroy the signal device in 10 days, Norman immediately said the escape plan will be executed 10 days later. Emma and Ray were both shocked. You know, it was only 2 weeks before the last child was released. They obviously had at least 1 month to prepare. However, Norman understood that the dean also had this idea. It was impossible to be unprepared. Let them run away, therefore. The earlier the escape plan was launched, the higher the success rate. So the time was set. That night, the three of them made an appointment with Tang and Gilda, 1 year younger than them, and planned to join the plan to assist them. Emma lied that the adopted children were actually sold to bad people by the dean. He deliberately concealed the fact that there was a ghost outside. Regarding what Emma said, Tang thought it was a joke, but Gilda next to him seemed to have expected it. Since that night, Norman and Emma went to the door. He found that the two were always investigating something secretly. Now I think it must have seen the adopted children being resold. In order to make the two believe everything, Norman also took it out, writing all the children's transcripts, combining the grades and adopted children. It is not difficult to find that there are 2 things in common that are over 6 years old and have the lowest grades. Under the remarks of Norman and Emma, Gilda finally agreed to join. However, as soon as the man finished, Lei asked Norman about the truth they will be eaten by ghosts and gave hope to them. But Norman said that compared to the truth, lies are the best answer to pulling the two into the group. He also told Don and Gilda different places to hide the rope. At that time, if the rope in a certain place disappears or attracts the attention of the dean, he can tell who is the insider. And the matter is as Norman expected. Late at night, the dean received a message. The rope was hidden under Norman's bed, which is what Don knew. At the same time, Gilda also found the nurse. It turned out that the nurse was determined to defeat the dean and wanted replaced her. Therefore, he had previously sent a joint invitation to Gilda. Gilda finally chose to pretend to be unaware and rejected the nurse. The whole process was eavesdropped in Emma's case. Gilda cleared of the suspicion, but the nurse obviously could not give up easily. The next day, she tried to win over Tang. So who is the inner demon? Now Norman was curious about why the insider wanted to betray him. In this regard, Lei felt that there must be corresponding benefits, such as betraying his companions to avoid being eaten by ghosts. Just like that, he is still one last step away from Norman's trap to close the net. He wanted to know Emma's treatment of the traitor. If someone voluntarily becomes a ghost subordinate in order to save his life, will Emma choose to abandon that person?
連れてく。
たとえ相手が望まなくても。
引っ張ってく。
In Emma's opinion, as long as they escape smoothly, the life of the ghost may not be guaranteed. And more importantly, she believes that all the children who grew up here are worthy of entrusting and saving families. Emma's answer made Norman a little surprised at the first time, but he quickly realized that he had guessed Emma would say this long ago. Then it was time to reveal the secret. When Gilda knew, the rope was still there, and the rope under Norman's bed was missing. At this point, there is no need to say who the insider was.
じゃあ、ドンで決まりだな。内通者は君だったんだね、レイ。
When the boy was running away, he suddenly found that all the people behind him were speechless and were sucked by a snowflake and became ghost desserts after meals, which led to this tragedy. It was precisely because of his innocent thoughts. He took all the children and had a slim possibility of escaping, but he wanted to save everyone. But he killed everyone. This made Norman recall the night when he just exposed the inner ghost. He set different traps for 3 people in advance to expose Lei to inform the dean. Seeing that Norman had seen through everything, Lei also laughed relievedly. He thought his disguise should be seamless, but he didn't expect that in the end. It was a strange move. Norman found the flaw. Seeing that Norman also smiled helplessly, there was no doubt that Lei was the most difficult situation in being an inner ghost. Not only could he understand the process of making the escape plan in detail, but he could also let the dean have any relevant information at any time. In addition, Norman also discovered that Lei was not an insider who had just become an insider recently. It turned out that he knew the truth about the orphanage many years ago and chose to become the dean's lackey. Now that the matter has been revealed, he really wants to know how Norman will deal with him. In this case, Norman said that what Lei wants to do is no different from before. It's just that this time he became his insider. He collected the information of the dean in turn. In other words, it was a rebellion. At first, Norman also thought about using Lei to convey false information to the dean, but under Emma's influence, he chose to believe that. Not only that, Norman also noticed many suspicious points of Lei being an insider. For example, the person who hid the rabbit doll was Lei. The purpose was to induce him and Emma to go to the door to see the truth. Otherwise, they would be kept in the dark now, let alone find a way to escape from here. From this point of view, Lei definitely has something else to do. It was as if they were manipulating them to escape from prison. Seeing that Norman had already speculated, Lei no longer concealed his plan and told him his plan. The reason why he took the initiative to serve the dean was just because he sneaked into the enemy's internal method of escape. He was dormant for 6 years to join forces with Norman to escape today. He reached a certain deal with the dean. The dean would give Lei the things he wanted to a certain extent. If the orphanage did not have it, the dean would even find a way to get it from the outside world for him. Of course, this does not include dangerous goods and other props. After years of experimental research, he had mastered it. It can be said that Lei only had to say everything he knew. The success rate of jailbreak will be greatly improved. However, Norman was extremely afraid of this. The boy in front of him was not the one he knew at all. He could never predict what Lei would do. This also means the escape plan. It is very likely that Lei was completely out of control. It was also at this time that Lei expressed his true purpose. He would continue to be a spy and assist Norman. But the condition was that he had to give up taking everyone away. When he was jailbreak, Norman could only take 2 extra people at most. All other children had to be abandoned. Otherwise, Lei would rather stay in the orphanage and wait for death. At this point, Norman had to agree, but he received Lei's warning in the next second.
今の言葉が嘘だったら。分かってる。嘘じゃないよ。
After a long conversation, Lei also came to the dean's room according to the agreed time to provide the information he knew. The new caregiver began to act without permission. Norman was training the children's ability to escape through hide and seek. In this way, under Lei's warning, Norman had a nightmare of failure in escape and the team was destroyed. When he woke up, he had to re-examine the promise of taking everyone away. If Emma died because the risk of escape became higher, then everything he did was meaningless. The next day, he confessed directly to Emma that Lei was an insider and had a change in attitude. He lied that he would help everyone escape. As for this lie, whether Emma saw through it, I believe that he understood it. But no matter how it will develop in the end, the plan to escape still has to be carried out every day. During this period, Emma and Gilda discovered that there was a secret room in the dean's room. At 8 o'clock every night, the dean would disappear for a while. I want to come. The probability is to contact the headquarters regularly in the secret room. Although the secret room may have some important information, the risk is too high. If it is discovered, it will fail. However, Tang, who is eager to save people, does not care about so much. He has always believed that there are children who were adopted before waiting for them to save them. How could he treat it as if he didn't know? So he secretly took Gilda into the dean's room despite Norman and others' dissuasion. Fortunately, they really found a secret room. Unfortunately, someone blocked the door.